Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. Our first graphic tonight is the hazardous weather, and there's a winter weather advisory out for the Brooks Range here, mostly on the southern areas and from the Dalton Highway to Adigan Pass, where as much as 4 to 8 inches of snow is expected to fall by Saturday midday. In fact, the advisory is out until noon Saturday, and the heaviest snow will be above 2,500 feet, and the heaviest of the heaviest will be around Adigan Pass. Moving on to satellite imagery, you can see some sunshine to start with here down to the south, Kodiak Island, right up along the North Gulf Coast, locally into Cook Inlet, and then back over toward Cordova, and then looks like trying to get into Yakutat. Otherwise, still showers going on today in areas of rain. Here for this panhandle, there's an upper level trough slowly moving eastward. Still have some more shower activity off the coast. And we got a band that's pushed into the eastern interior with some light precipitation there, kind of arcing back north of the central Arctic coast, back into the weakening but main low center that pulled up to the north. Next system rolling up, a lot of moisture spreading northward quite rapidly, kind of in surges. One surge right through here coming in, and then a little bit of a break there, and then the main front back here to the west, bringing rain to the Pribilofs, on down to the eastern Aleutians, break behind that, and yet another band forming back with the main low over the far western Aleutians, with pretty gusty winds, 25 to 35 knots out in that area. Rolling that through again, you can see the whole band of moisture is pushing eastward, and I'll start taking more of a jog to the northeast the farther east it gets. And so that's going to be spreading rain in tonight quite rapidly all along the coast, pushing inland and northward. And we can see that, again, here for the panhandle, drying out now. These showers, still some more moving through tonight, but then get into a drying period that may last 1 or 2 days. And for the chart today, you can see the trough right through there. Scattered showers. Sitka had about 0.2 of an inch of rain today, and that's one of the heavier amounts there, with the remainder of the amounts on the light side. Look like breaking out to some sunshine, as I mentioned, along the North Gulf Coast westward, catching the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Kachemak Bay area, and then warm front moisture spreading northward here. That's the first surge. Rain from the Yukon Delta, and as much as 1 to 0.2, maybe 1/4 of an inch falling there. Otherwise, just a few hundredths in other locations. And this trough bringing some light rain and snow, depending on your elevation. Of course, that's snow, getting elevation at all in the Brooks Range. And the main front back here to the west with the windier conditions as well. And behind that, a couple of more troughs that are kicking the winds up out over the western Aleutians once again. And for tonight, that front pushes eastward, but the main push is off to the northeast. You can see rain advances northward and eastward, right up into the Koyukuk Valley, up to the Brooks Range. Warm front crossing the eastern north slope to the coast tonight. Mixed precipitation in advance of that, and then it's going to be all rain following in, and the rain extends down, will extend down to the Fox Islands to about Atka. And again, as I mentioned, the last trough of showers will be moving into the southeast coast tonight, drying out back to the west. Still some isolated showers here over the eastern interior, mainly over the Alaska Range and central interior areas, with increasing clouds for Cook Inlet down to Kodiak Island. And we'll see for Tuesday, this next system pushes up to the northeast, 995 millibars. Pretty good frontal system right through here, so good strong winds in advance of that. Could gust 42, possibly as high as 50 miles per hour across the Alaska Range in the channeled areas there, with a pretty good increase in the winds. through much of the western interior, some cases into the central interior. Across the Brooks Range, this system pushes northeastward. Drier conditions come in behind, and looks like some pretty good rainfall amounts, precipitation pushing into the Brooks Range there on out to the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, looking really nice here for the Panhandle. Partly to mostly sunny conditions and dry. That'll extend up across the eastern Copper River Basin and the 40-mile country to about Eagle. Back out to the west, another trough swinging southeastward there. Kick the winds and showers up again as that passes by, improving behind it. And then for Wednesday's outlook, that main low here now just south of the Bering Strait, or almost on top of Savunga, or just to the east. Main front kind of stalled out here in the west, so south to north flow. That'll definitely push some moisture, rain heavy at times along the southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and back up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, with rain pushing into western Prince William Sound, and really having a tough time getting into the eastern interior at all, but still wet, and also warmer now for the Brooks Range area, and dry for the central and eastern north slope with downsloping conditions. But along that warm front boundary, periods of rain from the central coast right on down into the Kivalina area and the Chukchi Sea. But looks like this high is going to keep it pretty nice there for the Panhandle. And going to forecast lows for tonight, not too bad, in the 40s for the southeast coast, with lower 30s, maybe some upper 20s there for the Copper River Basin. Northward, mostly in the 30s as you get north of the mountains, back down to upper 20s to mid 30s. Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast, with the upper 20s farther in toward the mountains, and the mid 30s pretty common out along the coastline. 40s to lower 50s, southwest interior, especially the Alaska Peninsula. And then for highs tomorrow afternoon, pushing possibly into the lower 60s around the greater Fairbanks area, maybe reaching 60 up over areas of the Yukon Valley. 40s now, warmer conditions pushing on out to the Arctic coast with that southerly flow. Panhandle not too bad, more sunshine, probably rising into the lower 60s, and no change for the Alaska Peninsula Aleutians, with highs all in the lower 50s, mid 40s St. Lawrence Island area. And lows for Wednesday morning looking like this. Not too bad up north, all looks like above freezing, with mid to upper 30s now for the eastern Arctic coast and north slope areas with that southerly flow. Mid 40s upper Yukon Valley to near 50 in areas as you head southwest here to the coastline, and near 30 to into the 30s for the Copper River Basin. 40s for the Panhandle area. Out in the west, Aleutians mid to upper 40s there to lower 40s near St. Lawrence Island and those locations. And taking a look now at the highs for Wednesday afternoon. Again, not much of a change out here to the west. Near 50 for the Pribilofs, and near 50 or into the lower 50s here for the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Then you start nudging it up a little bit here as you move into Bristol Bay, get into the mid 50s, with lower 50s extending up to the Brooks Range here, Kobuk Valley, Koyukuk Valley. Sunshine pushing in the lower 60s for the upper Yukon Valley there. Down again around central Tanana Valley, Fairbanks, eastward, 60 to 65 for your highs on Wednesday. And mostly in the 50s here across the Copper River Basin, south central Alaska, and could get into the mid 60s, especially over the southern southeast coast on Wednesday afternoon with more sunshine. Again, a couple of dry days coming up there for sure, starting actually tonight and continuing through tomorrow. Otherwise, after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Widespread IFR is going to spread on up into the across the northern Bering Sea and inland across the Yukon Delta, northward across Kotzebue Sound, and bank up there along the south side of the western Brooks Range, and some more IFR here down along and south of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, eastern areas, eastern north slope, even the Arctic coast, down to the Gulf of Alaska looking VFR, much of the Panhandle looking pretty good. And then the outlook for tomorrow, all VFR for the southeast coast, marginal along the North Gulf Coast, IFR up along the western Alaska Range, south side of the Alaska Peninsula at Kodiak Island. And still, even though this area improves somewhat, some of it moves east with IFR on the south slopes of the Brooks Range, central Arctic coast, and from the Bering Strait south along the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas. And then for Wednesday morning, we've got it increasing again back to the west here, southern side of the Brooks Range with that southerly flow, marginal VFR up the west side of the Arctic coast. Good VFR offshore flow there for the east side. And southward here into the Copper River Basin, you pick up some marginal VFR again, North Gulf Coast, and widespread IFR here pushing back in across the eastern Bering Sea up into northern Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Valley, as well as the Yukon Delta. Breakout here, VFR coming into the far western Aleutians. And then for Wednesday afternoon, IFR here from the Bering Strait, a narrower band now along the coast and also the western Arctic coast. Just marginal conditions now on the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, and some IFR lingering for the western Alaska Range. Otherwise, VFR again for the Panhandle, Copper River Basin, eastern interior areas, with IFR around Kodiak Island. Passes looking like this tomorrow. IFR for both Anatuvik and Adigan, lowest conditions on the southern approach for each pass. And coming to Lake Clark and Merrill, downward trending conditions throughout the day expected tomorrow, starting out VFR becoming IFR throughout the later part of the afternoon, and that trend also for windy, but maybe only becoming marginal. And for windy as well, VFR deteriorating to marginal VFR, possible IFR showing up on the southern approach late in the day, or probably waiting until tomorrow evening. And for Isabel, VFR, Metasta, same forecast, Tanita VFR, and Portage, occasionally marginal at times throughout the day. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Taking a look at the freezing levels here, with that strong southerly flow, 10,000 feet now advances northward to Kuskokwim Bay, 8,000 feet there, almost to the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula, and then 2,000 feet retreating back a little bit there to the central Arctic coast. 6,000 feet across the Panhandle, and cooler air now moving into the western Aleutians. Icing looking like this. Pretty widespread area of isolated to moderate rime icing here into the Alaska Peninsula, all of the southwest interior, above about 8,000 feet down in this area. Now it's sloping back down to 4,000 feet up there toward the Brooks Range, maybe even lower than that along the Arctic coast. And then it cuts off abruptly here and unexpected over the eastern interior or the Panhandle areas out to the west. And moving on to the jet stream, it main jet right through here, coming across and south of the Aleutians. It splits right through here, and the main branch taking a turn to the north-northeast, right along the west coast there. Of course, this southerly flow driving all that moisture north and northeastward. And then 30 to 50 knots here along the North Gulf Coast, 50 knots across the Panhandle. For 9,000 feet, pretty good winds here coming in, 30 to 40 knots out of the west, turning southwest, same speed across the Bristol Bay area, and then up to 50 knots here over the western interior, right up to the western Brooks Range. Lighter, 20 to 30 here to the east. Lighter yet, south central Alaska Copper River Basin, 5 to 15 knots on down the Panhandle, and 3,000 feet, same pattern going on here, 30 to 40 knot winds west turning southwest, sailing on up to the Brooks Range, and 35 knot winds from the south reaching the central Arctic coast, lighter in the east, northwest up to 20 off the Panhandle, and falling back considerably over the far western Aleutians. Turbulence looking like this. Widespread moderate chop here, southwest interior, central Aleutians, and up along the Brooks Range area, as well as the eastern Arctic slope.
We have cleaned over 1,500 miles of shoreline now.
Basically, it comes down to just human muscle. I mean, we use chainsaws and knives.
We find stuff from like Russia and China and Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia. It really doesn't matter where it comes from. We all just have to clean it out.
Our goal right now in the next 10 or 11 days before the end of this year is just to see how much we can collect before we get to remove it.
What you see on the beach is a fraction of what's out there. You can pretty much break it down into 3 or 4 things. Water bottles, a lot of water bottles, styrofoam, fishing nets, fishing buoys. And that's 99% of what you find on the beach. Basically just go along with chainsaws and muscle and get the garbage, put it in sacks, and then from there we haul it up above the log jam so it's out of any heavy surf or winter storms if it's going to stay there for the year, and put it in super sacks. So yeah, we just progressively work down the coast, just day in and day out.
We have like daily goals for ourselves that, like, if we're working at a pretty good rate, we'd like to keep on pace with about, like, I don't know, about 20 to 25 super sacks a day. So this is pile 102, and in this pile right now we have 2 super sacks and 1 set of buoys. June 23rd here, this is what we've done today. We're up to 25 super sacks on the day, and I think for now we'll call it and just keep cleaning until tomorrow.
My name is Hannah, and I represent a organization in Japan called Japan Environmental Action Network. With over 20 people working together to clean up the beach, this is amazing. Like, we all need to work together to, clean up the beach as much as possible. So like every single time I go back to Japan, I talk to the fishermen, and the fishermen's like, it's a joke, but they're like, if you find any buoy with my logo, you gotta bring it back, and it's like, always looking out for that stuff.
The crew's awesome. I mean, we're all skiers or snowboarders, and we're all friends. I mean, we're all good friends. My dad started it. He's the man behind the desk. He makes the ball roll for sure. He works hard. He doesn't give up easy, which is good.
This stuff is uplifted quite a ways during the earthquake. Well, I think my bag's about full already. Yeah. I'm gonna take a quick look back in here. Somebody else is back here. The thing about marine debris is it's kind of a hidden problem. Unless you're out there, especially on these remote beaches that are so heavily impacted, people don't see it. I remember probably a good 20 years ago, I was out on the outside of Montague Island, flew out there, and I was just utterly astounded by all the garbage out there. You walk out there and you wade through this stuff and you go, this isn't right, this shouldn't happen.
I think a lot of it's just awareness. I mean, I've been boating out here for a long time, and I wasn't even aware of how extensive the marine debris problem is out here, but it's a consumer world out there for sure. I mean, I don't know where people's values are, I guess, but mine is you got to kind of have a little bit of respect for the environment, and considering we live in it, especially in Alaska. I mean, a lot of people like the outdoors and like to be part of the outdoors. That's why they live here, and it's they don't necessarily want to see it trashed.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, not too different from what we saw yesterday with ice way back to the northwest and about 300 nautical miles north of the central coast here, and in this area lingering about 100 nautical miles north of Kenzie River Delta. And over the next few days, with the storm coming up, the winds, this area could get affected probably starting late in the weekend, which would maybe push it back farther to the north or northeast into maybe Monday. Moving on to the marine forecasts. For the Panhandle, pretty nice. We got northwesterlies 15 knots along the coast, 10 knots over the inside waters, Sept Lynn Canal, northern Lynn Canal, south 15 in the afternoon. And then the outlook for Wednesday, even nicer or lighter on the winds here. About 10 knots on the north, but the south coast could kick up to 20 knots there along the coast at times, and 10 to 15 over the inside waters. South only 10 now for northern Lynn Canal, and sea's pretty good out here, just 4 to 5 feet. Cook Inlet tomorrow, south winds 15 knots north of the foreland. Small craft advisories developing. South 25, southeast 30, Kachemak Bay, falling back to 20 knots for the Barrens. North Gulf Coast, south to southeast, 10 to 15 knots, as well as Prince William Sound, with seas running about 4 feet. And then for Wednesday, south to southeast 15 to 20 for the North Gulf Coast, southeast 15 for Prince William Sound, northern Cook Inlet, and south of the Forelands, 30-knot winds with 7 to 9 foot seas into Kachemak Bay. Small craft advisories out of the south for the Barren Islands. And for the Alaska Peninsula area, we've got southerlies here, 30 to 35 knots. Gales restricted to the southern side of the southern coast of the Alaska Peninsula there. 30-knot winds extending up to Sitkinak and then dropping back to about 25 knots Shelikof Strait, and 20 knots there along the east side of Kodiak Island. And then for the Wednesday outlook, small craft advisories continue here from the south and southwest for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. Good southerly winds here for Kodiak Island, east side Shelikof Strait, south 25 to 30 with 6 to 11 foot seas. Out over the Aleutians, we've got 30 to 35 knot winds, so areas of gale force winds out here in the west to the central areas, and really pretty uniform speed-wise here, 30 to 35 knots, more southwesterly here from Adak and Atka to the Fox Islands. And then for Wednesday, Lighter winds 15 knots out west, 20 to 25 here from Atka over to Unalaska Island. Seas running at about 9 to 10 feet. And for the southwest coast here, south winds 30 knots. Same thing for the St. Matthew Island and Pribilofs there, 25 to 30 knots, seas 9 to 11 feet. North 30 knots for St. Lawrence Island. And then the outlook, south 25, south of Nunivak Island, west for the Pribilofs turn northwest there over the northern Bering Sea. Northerly winds continue for St. Lawrence Island, but lighter at 20 knots. And up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, southeast winds 20 in the far east areas, picking up to 25 knots, turning easterly at 25 for the central coast, then back around to the south, up to 30 knots, 7-foot seas, and then turning westerly down toward Cape Beaufort to northwest from Cape Thompson on down to Wales. And the outlook for Wednesday, northerly winds there from Wales to Cape Beaufort, 15 knots, and lighter winds here for the west side and the central coast, west-southwest or west becoming southwest at 10, and then southerly winds 15 knots for the eastern coastline, not too bad, seas 3 to 4 feet. And looking at tonight's weather again, the last trough coming through, so showers will linger through the night tonight for the Panhandle. And this next system pushing rain eastward and northward here across all of the western interior. Wet conditions, Alaska Peninsula on out to the west. And we'll see that moves not too far to the east, kind of actually pulls back here, so rain and wind continue. Alaska Peninsula, Yukon Delta, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast now. And rain and showers beginning to increase here south central Alaska throughout the day. Nice over the southeast coast and interior, and that pushes eastward. Rain, possibly heavy at times, southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, up across all of the western interior, the southeast coast, mostly sunny, up into the eastern Tanana Valley.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.